Opposition presidential candidates in the Democratic Republic of Congo say Wednesday's planned protest in the capital Kinshasa is still on despite a ban. 5 candidates had called for the protests over alleged irregularities in last week's elections. The government on Tuesday banned the demonstration, saying it did not have a legal basis and aims to undermine the electoral process while vote counting is still underway. 13 embassies in Kinshasa have released a joint statement calling for restraint and urging citizens to remain calm. Meanwhile, partial results from the presidential poll have been trickling in, showing President Felix Tshisekedi in the lead. The full provisional election results are expected on December the 31st. The presidential and legislative elections held last Wednesday were marred by massive delays and bureaucratic chaos, forcing the Electoral Commission to extend voting in some areas by several days. Some officials said voting was still ongoing as late as yesterday in certain areas. The electoral body has acknowledged delays but denies the credibility of the election was compromised by extended voting. Civil society organizations and presidential candidates have been calling for the elections to be annulled. Let's get more on this. We are joined by Chris Ochimringa in Kinshasa. Chris, welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us. Chris, the opposition in the DRC had said the planned protests over the alleged election irregularities would go on despite the government declaring it illegal. What is the latest on this? What do we know?
Well, Richard, there are a number of supporters of the opposition candidates who have gathered outside the political party offices of one of the leading candidates, Martin Fayulu, and they are waiting for Mr. Fayulu and his colleagues who are inside that office to finish their meeting and come out so that they can start walking along the busy streets of Kinshasa. But the police have been deployed very heavily around that area. They have surrounded the offices with their armored vehicles, their anti-riot gear, and they're ready to crack down on this protest, which was banned by the government, like you mentioned, on Tuesday. The opposition members held a press conference after the government said that this protest will be illegal, saying that it's within their constitutional right to demonstrate and no one will stop them. So they are really determined. We saw some young people outside there chanting anti-government slogans, saying the election was marred by very many irregularities and they want a rerun to be held with a totally different electoral commission, which is something that is very unlikely to happen. The government says no, they will not allow this to happen because many times in the DRC, these opposition candidates say that these protests are supposed to be peaceful, but they end up becoming violent, and people start looting property of other citizens, and they're not going to allow that to happen. Richard?
Chris, one final question. Is the election body likely to meet the set deadlines of releasing results? How do you see it?
Well, the head of the Electoral Commission, Mr. Denis Kadima, said that they are going to go by the electoral calendar and release the provisional results on the 31st of December. But they still have a long way to go. So far, they have released results, provisional results from the diaspora and a number of provinces around the DRC. And it shows that President Felix Tshisekedi has a clear lead of 78%. His closest challenger, Moise Katumbi, came second with 14%. And Martin Fayulu was third with 4%. Now, these votes represent about 6,100,000 of the votes cast. And there, according to the Electoral Commission, there were nearly 44 million people who were registered to vote in this election. We still do not know how the voter turnout was, the overall number of people who came out to cast their votes. So we don't know how many more people are still left to be counted, but there's still a lot of work to be done, and they said that they are on course to deliver the final provisional results on the 31st. It's just 4 days away, so we are waiting. Congolese are eagerly waiting for those results because there are a section of Congolese who have disputed the election and want it to be annulled, which is something that the government says is not going to happen. Richard?
All right, Chris Ochimringa, Kinshasa, thanks for that. Earlier on, we spoke to Fred Baumer, the executive director of the Ebuteli Institute, a research center on politics, governance, and violence. He discussed the credibility of DRC's elections and what could be done to make the process more transparent.
The fact that people are continuing to vote poses a lot of problems, both legally but also politically. Legally, it's very difficult. Legally, the law doesn't allow normally the vote to be extended without by the Senate itself or by the local offices themselves beyond the electoral date or the day following it. Even the day following it, they are requested to have a decision that's authorized the break of the law. Now, the more importantly, I think continuing to organize election many days after the electoral date, we are not sure if there are witnesses or observers in those polling centers, and therefore the results that will come from those centers are likely to be contested. And in this very volatile time, I don't think that is something that will reinforce credibility. It will rather continue to reinforce those who are doubting about the viability of this process. Well, Congo is a big country with poor infrastructure, so it's not a surprise that it's difficult to deploy all the material, and this is something that was known by the Electoral Commission. I think the main reason why we are witnessing this is political imperatives. The Electoral Commission was pressured to organize election by the 20th of January, by the 20th of December, despite the fact that they were not ready logistically. And instead of trying to postpone for a week or two the time for them to finish the deployment of materials, they follow pressure by let's say all political actors actually. And the result is what we are seeing today. The fact is that if the Senate stick to its technical capacities and it assesses that it's not ready and says clearly, then maybe they could have found other solutions rather than exposing people to this level of disorder. Well, I think many international actors has been insisting on good governance and democracy, and the election are at the core of it. Reinforcing accountability of the institution and reinforcing the power of the people to choose what they want and to sanction their leaders requires to have a fair process, a credible process throughout which they can express their voices. And so I think it's in the interest of international actors to actually wait in and make sure the process, the electoral process, are free and fair enough, and the outcome of it allows a legitimate rule of the country, so that we can maybe avoid contestation and focus on development and providing for people who are waiting a lot of these processes.